The new year has started off with a bit of a bang for the Artifexian podcast bill, in that apparently, out of nowhere, we've charted. We got an email from somebody. I don't know who this person is. I won't name them, but they look like they're from like a legit company, and they were like, "Hey, just so you know, the Artifexian podcast is now ranked number 234 on the Apple Podcasts book chart in the US." Which is like cool and also baffling. And yeah, I guess that's a thing. And I'm happy about that.
Weird.
And we are like, I mean, remember we had this whole thing where we were listed as education and technology for a while, and then I didn't feel good about that. So I moved us to literature, which I also still don't feel good about. But there's no real genre to describe what it is we do here.
Give us a world building category.
Exactly.
We'll dominate it.
Exactly. We'll dominate the category of one. I know there's word building podcasts out there. And yeah, so that's, I'm assuming, why we have charted in the books section. I'm just really glad that we're going to, in the future, talk about books on this podcast. That makes me feel good about being in the book chart. So that's the first point. I just thought that was cool, just a fun thing to bring up. Second point is there is new merch. We did a poll last month, I believe, on whether or not people wanted to see Ripped Bill, Ripped Edgar, or both of us on a shirt. As is predicted, of course, everyone went both of us, and I had to go through the uncomfortable experience of vectorizing myself semi-nude and putting it on a t-shirt, which I can't say I enjoyed, but that t-shirt exists, and you can find it in the links in the show notes on the Artifexian podcast Teespring store. Yeah, it's a white t-shirt, Bill on the front, Edgar on the back. Does what it says on the tin.
Where's the... Oh yes, okay, I can see the back there now. That's hilarious.
Oh, and as for the person again who made the artwork, if you wish to purchase one of these things, just email us a proof of purchase or whatever, and we'll sub you back a free t-shirt on that, just, you know, for the sake of it, because you made the art. And I will, as follow up next month, I'll see if anyone outside of the creator actually purchased this t-shirt, because if someone does, I kind of want that person to email us and just tell us why, because that would be really interesting to know, why are you buying this t-shirt of all t-shirts? But there you go.
I mean, I love it, but I don't think I'm narcissistic enough to wear it myself.
I just about am getting comfortable with the notion of wearing my own merch, as in just like with my own logo on it, in places where branding is desirable. I'm just about comfortable with that. I am never ever, I think, going to be comfortable wearing myself, an image of myself on my chest. Like, that is just that's so strange. It's, you know, Steve-O from Jackass.
I do.
He has a giant portrait of himself on his back, like as tattoo.
He does.
That's hilarious. But I could never do that. Like, that is just, that takes a special sort of person.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, you know, wearing your own band merch, like at a concert, like while performing, is a little gauche.
Oh yeah, that's not really a thing you see people do.
Seldom, yeah. You see it sometimes, and I think it varies from scene to scene. But I think it's a little, I don't know, it's a little classless. You should like rep other people when you're on stage, unless it's part of a costume. Like there's bands who they have quite an elaborate appearance or a very like specifically curated appearance, and then you can buy elements of that outfit, and that's the same as what they were on stage. I think that's a little bit of a different situation.
What happens if, do you think this sort of unwritten rule of not wearing your own t-shirt, not wearing your own merch, do you think this extends to non-concert scenarios? So like if the band is doing like a record signing or a book signing, do you think it's gauche for them to wear their own merch in that instance?
A little bit, yeah. I think within metal, or certainly like how I kind of perceive it as a fan, you're you're giving information about like what else you care about, what other bands you care about, and it situates you within a culture. And I think it's a little weird to just kind of focus totally on yourself instead.
Do you think it's gauche for YouTubers to wear their own merch?
I don't know. I'm not in YouTube enough to say. I don't really notice it that much, I'd say. And it's kind of, that's a newer culture, and it's more fundamental to how they make their money.
Right.
Arguably. I mean, maybe not. I mean, like, merch is a big deal for bands, but yeah, it feels a little different, and I'm not sure exactly why.
That makes sense. Yeah, I always find it a little bit tactless. Like even creators that I really like on YouTube, they constantly wear their own merch, and it feels a little bit used car salesman.
Right.
But then, like, I also have the opposite opinion of kind of like you pointed out, merch is a big deal for creators, particularly creators who suffer from the demonetization bot an awful lot on YouTube. That sort of direct support is a really important part. So like they should be able to plug it. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I've kind of thought about whether or not I want to wear my own merch on camera to like properly be branding. And it's not something that I'm immediately comfortable with. I know it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
I know Adam Neely does. Now that I think about it, Adam Neely wears like the Lick T-shirt sometimes, or he did when it was new enough, and that didn't strike me as weird.
Yeah, but that's like a joke. Like that T-shirt is like a joke. It'd be the equivalent of like me wearing this ripped Edgar T-shirt. Like that's not a serious attempt at branding or a serious attempt at sales. It's just like,
although you could wear that because on camera the front is what's going to be visible, so it'll be an image of me, not an image of you.
Can you imagine if I actually did that? No one would have a clue what's happening, because obviously like the YouTube audience is so much bigger than the podcast audience. It'd be like, why is he wearing like this white shirt with like this naked dude with an eagle on it? Like they'd have no reference. And even people who listen to the podcast,
do it.
I'm totally not doing it. But even people who listen to the podcast, I'd say a good majority of them don't know what what you look like, as well. So that would be a really strange non sequitur, and I'm not going to do it. And no amount of cajoling is going to get me to do it. Okay, so that was pre-show. Shall we do some follow-up?
We got a question on the subreddit for last episode from user Granny Jim. And the question is, how do the people in the cradle know that the other planets are inhabited by people? Is this because of the Bini, or do they have good enough technology to actually observe the surfaces of other planets? I can't remember what I said specifically about the people in the cradle. I know I did say that the people of Vasa and of Icairn are aware of that the other planets are inhabited. People in the cradle generally would, I suspect. Not all of them would. The cradle is quite diverse. In some ways, it's probably a bit more diverse than the other planets, and there's a lot more variation in terms of technology and information and knowledge of the rest of the universe. But generally, people who are aware that the other planets are inhabited would know through the same way as, or people who believe that the other planets are inhabited believe it because of stories, the same way that the Icairn and Fasath mostly know. For people who have like actual positive knowledge of it, some of them would be able to like have telescopes, and they can see like lights and things, and stuff on the night side of the other planets. And then some wouldn't know, I suspect. The Bini, not super involved in that. The Bini kind of keep to themselves in terms of what they share about their knowledge. they have a presence on every other planet, or every other human inhabited planet, but they don't. It's the inhabitants of each planet aren't necessarily aware that the Bini have a presence on the other planets. So if you're on Fasath, you know about the Bini, and you know the Bini are different to Fasathi humans. You don't necessarily know that they are from the Cradle, and you don't necessarily know that they have the ability to travel between them.
Oh, that's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think are there people on the various planets who are like conspiracy theorists and like they shun the stories that tell of inhabited other planets, and they don't listen to the experts with their telescopes, and they're just like, no, there's no other life in the universe but on this planet?
It's very possible on Cradle. I imagine it would be less common on the other two planets because all of their ancestral knowledge and stories and stuff are about coming from another planet. Okay. So it would be quite unusual. I'm sure there are people who do believe that, but it would be very much a minority kind of belief.
Cool. That's a really cool answer to a really cool question.
Yeah, great question. I find that kind of stuff very helpful. Like trying to model what the inhabitants or what the characters within your setting know and why they know it. That's a great tool for me. So that question was exactly along my interests. Thank you, Granny Jim.
Oh, class. Behind the scenes stuff for the listeners here. I picked out that question. Bill didn't. I went through Reddit to formulate the show notes. So I'm very happy that I picked out a question that Bill really enjoys. I've done my job as a curator of feedback. Granny Jim, also there's a second part to Granny Jim's question here that I'm going to tackle. They ask, when building naturalistic human conlangs, do you think it's important to obey what's currently seen as universal grammar? For instance, would it be possible to construct a language where determiners and their noun phrases aren't next to each other? So for example, if you had like this cat, this being the determiner, cat being the noun, could you construct a sentence where you have like cat, word, this, for example? Like they're no longer beside each other. The answer to that is like strictly going by the wording of your question. If your aim is to create a naturalistic human conlang, then yeah, you should stick to the universals of grammar, because they will kind of spit out for you something that seems like it's a naturalistic human conlang. But if your intentions are in any way deviant from that, don't feel obliged to stick to the universals of grammar. And I would always encourage people to try out something funky with language, like splitting apart determiners and nouns, and seeing what that produces, and if the results are in any way coherent at all, because through experimentation, great inventions can be had.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. Thank you, Granny Jim, for writing in. I have some Star Wars follow-up, Bill, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
So in general, just little thoughts about Star Wars. It's mad. From listening to other reviews and people talk about Star Wars, I really seem to be in the minority of people who like enjoyed the film. Not thinking that it's great or anything, just being like, it was fun silliness that didn't really make a whole bunch of sense, and that was fine. Most people were like, this is stupid, like this is mega stupid, and people seem to be very upset about it, which is, it seems to be par for the course when it comes to modern Star Wars. But it was just weird being not in the majority. It was strange. There's a really interesting thing I heard one reviewer comment about this film. They said something to the effect of, this whole trilogy is plagued with this sort of like modern concept of storytelling, whereby subversion trumps like just like a bog ordinary narrative. Like, so they're more they're more interested in subverting our expectations and like setting us up and undercutting us and things like that than just telling a story. And I think that really resonated with me, because I think so much of the problems with this trilogy is like they're just playing with the sort of weight of the mythology that they have, and forgot to tell just a coherent story along the way. So that was some of my general thoughts. Have you any general feelings, having stewed in the culture for a little bit since the last time we recorded?
No, my thoughts are pretty much what they were. Nothing has really changed it that much for me. I heard a couple of other further criticisms, a couple of like mild defenses of it, but nothing really stuck with me that much. So I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was worth a watch, but it wasn't good, would be my takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. So the bit of Star Wars follow up that I really want to bring up is comes via Hunwin on Reddit. And do you remember we talked about the cavalry charge, the gold horse cavalry charge on top of,
and how immensely dope it was? Yeah.
It definitely was dope, Bill. Definitely dope. I voiced concerns about how that was really jarring, because I figured that the people on the gold horses would need some sort of space equipment, because they're like high up in the atmosphere, and surely altitude sickness and the whole shebang. Hunwin did, I'm going to link this in the show notes. Hunwin did an excellent bit of like mathematics that really speaks to me, because I feel like I am this nerd as well, wanting to pick apart the numbers. And they essentially calculated that a realistic level for these Star Destroyers to be at in the atmosphere is just below Denver. So it's entirely plausible for them to conduct combat on the wing of the Star Destroyer at that level for a short period of time without feeling effects and without needing a spacesuit. They go on to say that the problem is not that. The problem is that the poor horses are native to the place where they come from is a small moon with like 1/5 the gravity, and they're being transported onto Exegol or whatever, which has apparently crushing gravity. And John Boyega, the last bit here is that or is it John Boyega on top of said horse in that gravity would be the equivalent of an Earth horse carrying 309.5% of its own body weight. So the poor horses wouldn't survive that cavalry charge, but the people fighting on the wing of the Star Destroyer will be A-okay. And I think that's brilliant. Links in the show notes to this bit of mathematics. It's wonderfully fun and just the right amount of nerds that really warms the cockles of my heart.
So I'm just getting this great image of a horse trying to carry 3 horses. Like 3 horses trying to ride a horse. What's called
Hunwin has a really nice visual thing here. He's like, that would be like taking 2 Toyota Camrys and putting them onto a horse. Period. End of comment. And I'm like, yes, it's great.
Wow, so a horse is like 2/3 of a car.
I can buy that. I'm assuming a Toyota Camry is quite a small car. Yeah, I could totally buy that. But yeah, so everyone should go check it out. It's brilliant. So it turns out, Bill, your intuition was correct there. They'd be totally fine on the wing of a Star Destroyer, but we did not. None of us considered the poor goat horses. And so final bit of, this isn't even follow-up, but final bit of stuff from email that we received. We had another contribution to Shit Flag Corner this month, and it comes via Jacob, who I believe has written in before, and they send us the standard of the Irish brigade during an expedition of it to Scotland in 1644. It's very specific flag nerdery going on here, and it is glorious. So, should I describe or should you describe?
Yeah, You can describe, sure.
All right, so we're looking at what appears to be a square flag. Bear in mind that this is often someone's reconstruction of the flag on Wikipedia, so take that with a pinch of salt. We're looking at a square flag of like bright highlighter yellow, right? Like the brightest, most saturated yellow you can possibly get. In the canton, we have a what's that thing called? The George St. Andrew's Cross? Is that what's that called?
It's St. Patrick's Saltire.
St. Patrick's Saltire, except it's a red like cross saltire thing with what appears to be like a red border, but the negative space on the canton is also highlighter yellow, so it seems really weird. It's as if it was meant to be white and red, but someone just deleted the white in Illustrator and left it as is. It looks really bizarre. But directly below that, we have what I assume is Latin, and it perhaps reads as Vivat Carolus Rex, maybe? And that means something. I don't know what that means. Something to do with a king, maybe?
Yeah, I know what it means.
Oh, what's it mean?
Well, this is like an educated guess. I don't read Latin. But based on the time period and the context and like what I can figure out from the Latin, it means like long live King Charles.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Viva. As
Viva
in, like,
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Carolus would be Charles.
That makes sense. And then below Vivat Carolus Rex, we have a giant sea oar.
Carolus Rex.
Carolus Rex. And then below that, we have a image of the crown. And then to the right of that, so going over onto the fly side of the flag, we have, oh Jesus, my Latin's going to be terrible here. Exurgat devs dissiper pertrixur inimixus. Whatever that means.
Expurgat deus dissipextur inimicus.
And do you know, are you able to decipher what that is?
No, but Google Translate's about to.
I love the confidence that it'll actually get it right, not just spit out nonsense. While you're Google translating, above that bit of text is an image of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ holding out, and like this image is like, it's like a photorealistic, high fidelity reproduction. Like, it's not stylized in any way, shape, or form. It's as if someone got this image from like a book and like cut it out and stuck it on the flag. It's so jarring, given that everything else is graphical, stylized, or just textual. It's really bizarre. And so Jesus is wearing a sort of jade robe, and he has a big orange halo, and he has his right arm raised up in like praise, and his other arm is like out flat, and it's so jarring that it's so hyper realistic, and on this like garish yellow background. It is beautiful.
Sorry, I got distracted by trying to figure out what was going on there, and I found something very interesting. Yeah, this is marvelous. Now, we've kind of, this has come up before, that it's a military standard rather than a flag.
Sure, yeah.
In a strict sense. So there are some differences in the culture and in how it will be perceived in that. Mm-hmm. But this is, it's definitely something.
It's the Jesus, man. The Jesus gets me. Like, I'm willing to be okay with all that text and to have a flag within a flag and then a crown. Like, that's fine. But it's the hyper realistic Jesus that is just like, what were you thinking? Could you not have done? You know, isn't that the symbol? There's a symbol. It looks like a fish. Isn't that a symbol for Jesus in Christianity?
Yeah, but not in that time period.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say, like, there must be some sort of stylized representation of Jesus they could use.
In modern times, that's mostly used by evangelical churches, I think. I don't think it would have been in use in the 1600s. And again, like, in the context of this here, this was a heavily religiously coded conflict. Oh no, hold on. Well, let me think about this for a second. This was the English Civil War, so they were fighting against dissenters and disestablishmentarians and stuff. So, they were in support of a nominally Protestant king, but this would have been a Catholic brigade or whatever. Yeah, the Irish Brigade. So that would have been relevant to their branding or whatever the term you want to use is in some way.
Man, do you know what I think?
What?
I think they should have just went with a cardboard cutout of Jesus and just left it at that. Like, get rid of everything else. Just go into battle with your just like a life-size cardboard cutout of Jesus and be like,
no actual standard, just a cardboard cutout on a stick.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah. And then like make the stick like really, or maybe instead of stick, like some sort of system of like fishing wire, which may or may not have been around in like the 1600s, so that like when facing this brigade, it'll appear like there's just like a series of floating Jesuses, like they're performing miracles in front of them. You know, like it doesn't look like it's a picture of Jesus on a stick. It looks like literal Jesus floating there, not being held up by anyone. That's what I think they should have done.
So will I tell you what I found here?
Yes, tell me. I'm intrigued, Bill.
So I was putting this into Google Translate. Exurgat Deus despextur inimicus. Apologies to any Latin scholars for my total guess at the pronunciation. It's contemporary Hibernian Latin, just it's a valid variant. So I put that in, and Google Translate could not tell me what it was. I got, let me get it back up here. Let God disapextver enemy, right? So obviously there's something wrong with disapextver. That's not a word. And I changed it to disapextur, like changed the V to a U, and still got nothing. So I Googled that word, disapextver, to see what we could get. See if it would like come up in a dictionary or something. And I found a blog from September 2012 by someone who I guess is like a historical wargamer. And so the blog is called Project Alderon 1645, Wargaming the War of the Three Kingdoms in Scotland. So this is this time period. And they have another image of the flag of the Irish Brigade on their blog. And there are no contemporary illustrations, they say. But they are taken from descriptions in a news sheet from 1644.
Ah.
Yes. And there's a couple of other ones here. There's a similar one here. From another Irish brigade, which is white background, but still with a yellow canton and a red saltire, and then a red cross with 12 golden rays coming out of it, in the place of Jesus, where Jesus is in our one. It still says Vivat Cordulus Rex. There's a Seor and a crown, and then there's a different Latin motto at the bottom, which reads Auqueum est pro Christo mori, which means it is just to die for Christ.
Jesus, that's bleak. Holy Christ.
Well, yeah. Anyway, so the reason this comes up is they have a little bit here about the disapextraver, and it was a misprint in a book called Scots Armies of the English Civil Wars by a guy called Stuart Reid, and he misprinted the motto as Exurgat Deus disapextver, but it should be Exurgat Deus disapentur inimici.
Oh.
Which has been translated here as let God arise and let his enemies be scattered.
Oh. Man, can we all, listeners, can we all just take a second to acknowledge that Bill did all of this investigation while I was talking about the flag, which is not enough time in my mind to be able to do all of that. Like you identified a problem, tried a possible solution, couldn't find it, researched the problem, found the solution, and then now are presenting it. And all of that time I was banging on about Jesus.
All live on air But I mean, that's also why I got distracted, and responded a little bit more slowly than usual. But yes, so there it is. I will send you this link, and you can put it in the show notes. And this blog hasn't been updated for 2 years now, so maybe it's defunct. But hopefully, you'll all go and visit the blog, and the blogger will see their analytics spike for some reason and be very curious as to why.
Exactly.
And maybe it'll make them happy.
Links in the show notes. Really quick thing before I move on to main topic, just the misspelling remind me of it. I am constantly shocked by the amount of errors that appear in good sources. Like there's been a couple of times in my videos where I've like bought like a book by an actual linguist from like an academic press, and I just use their examples in a video, and then people who speak the language that I'm using, notable was Portuguese and Italian, I mucked both of those up. People are like, that's not how Italian works, or that's not how Portuguese work. And I look at the book and I'm like, that's the exact example printed here. It's crazy. And then the last video I made, which we'll discuss later on the show, some of the mathematics was just like wrong in the paper. They were like, here's a load of Kaktovik Iñupiaq numbers, and it means this number. And I'm like, no, like it doesn't, like that doesn't work mathematically at all. And it's just bizarre, like, so it's made me really think about, like, every time I get a source, no matter where it comes from, it constantly needs to be checked, because you even can't rely on experts in their field to like get it correct, which is just deeply disturbing.
I was going to say, there could be variations in, because I thought you were going to initially make this about spelling, and I mean, trying to transcribe languages in Latin script isn't always easily done, and there are different systems and stuff, and that could be part of it, but that wasn't really relevant to what you said. When are the examples in, say, Portuguese or Italian from? And like, what is the nature of the mistake or the nature of the error? Because things can change over time. Or no, I'm not saying that the native speakers are wrong, but it's maybe that the language has shifted since. Is that possible in the examples you're talking about, or?
I mean, maybe. I'd want to be an expert on, like, how Italian has changed over the course of the past, couple of generations to really.
That's your next video topic.
You what?
That should be your next video topic.
No, not even slightly. But the example I remember, or at least vaguely remember, is I think it was demonstrating, I think, something to do with mood or modality, and the linguist gave an example from I think it was Italian in this instance, and the linguist is a dude called Palmer. It's from a book called Mood Modality, 2nd edition. I'm looking at it right now, and it's published by Cambridge Press. And the feedback I got from people who speak Italian was that, like, that's like not grammatically correct, that sentence.
Right.
Which I guess the way you pronounce things can change a little bit. I know grammar can change a little bit, but like getting something where native speakers go, like, that makes literally no sense. That seems a little bit beyond the scope of the language changed a little bit since this book was written in the 80s or something. It just seems like they just got it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. Like, everyone gets a thing wrong. You're reminded how fallible humans are when the experts in their field put in typos or miscite a thing, and you're like, oh dear, we're all fallible. All we're doing is trading fallible information with one another in the hopes that we come up with something decent at the end of the day, and that's a really scary thought. World billing.
What
do you got for us?
I have written something for you this episode.
Shock horror.
There's, a 90% chance that's what I've done.
That's fair.
Sometimes it's a map, but not this time. Okay, we're back in Cairn this episode, and I'll just get straight into it.
For sure. Go for it.
Increasing danger of northern settlements. Late events suggest that the smaller settlements in the northern regions are under ever greater threats from attack and isolation. Recently returned traders and patrols travelling the Mirsvir-Jikav route bring reports of terrible events at the town of Smatvir, a remote settlement of a few dozen souls lying off a tributary of the main trading corridor. Discovered by a Tamari patrol vessel responding to accounts of distressed messages received by regional free traders, this outlying town was recently utterly demolished by an assault of unknown beasts. Investigation by the officers of the vessel, the Aspire, determined a likely course of events as follows. While a free trader was stopped at Smatvir, presumably on routine business, the attack began. At least 3 creatures emerged from the thick forest to the west of the town, the west being the direction with the least clearance between the town's walls and the tree line. Several citizens managed to retreat within the walls. Those who did not were quickly killed by the assaulting creatures. Despite the full defences being raised against the attack, the creatures quickly destroyed part of the fortifications and gained entry to the town proper. Those townfolk who had not sought shelter underground were crushed in their attempt to fight against the invasion. Several attempted to flee aboard the free traders' vessel, which turned its batteries upon the attackers. The vessel was quickly brought down and crashed into several buildings, starting a fire. The remaining townsfolk, hiding in their own cellars or in the vault below the central warehouse, were not spared. Those that did not perish in the fire were killed by the creatures digging into their refuges and brutally killing every citizen of Smatvir. The determination of the officers of the Aspire, based on their observations of the site, the spoor of the beasts, and the apparent intelligence and cruelty demonstrated in their assault, was that this attack was carried out by at least 3 Arviks. Arviks have never before been known to venture so far south, nor to seek out human settlements outside their native ranges. The free trader was named as Captain Felin Krastba, an itinerant merchant of the vessel Sweet Fog, a veteran visitor to the towns of this region, and well known and well loved in those parts. Should this be a portent of future assaults by the violent creatures of the deep interior, the lives and the trades of Abesk people are in grave danger. Between increased attacks, harsher climates, and the subversion of our trade and morals by other nations, life in the hinterlands is becoming more precarious. The cities cannot sustain themselves without the labours of the outlying towns, and it is apparent the lesser towns may no longer be able to sustain themselves simply on their own industry. To preserve the security of Abeski, whether on the frontiers or in the spires, the routes plied by free traders should be bought by the companies, who can leverage their greater resources and expertise to better secure both life and cargo. Published by the Mirsphere Broadsheet Company.
Very cool. I believe, Bill, this is the first newspaper clipping we've had.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it wouldn't be exactly like a newspaper as we think of them, but it's kind of along those lines.
I like it's very cool. Now, I don't really want to bring this up for fear of inciting a flame war in comments or anything. But let's talk politics for a second. Was this writing perhaps informed by recent events between the US and Iran?
Not even remotely.
Oh, the entire time you were reading that, I was like, oh, this is just an analog for what's going on, and Bill will have comments. So I need to update my protocol here. Every time I think you're talking about real world events like Hong Kong protests or the impending World War III, it's not that, no matter how much I think your writing implies that. I now know how to proceed, Bill.
Listen, man, Edgar, death of the author. Just because I'm not thinking it doesn't mean it's not there.
Because you can totally read into it. You know, and
Really?
like there's one line at the very end. You say between increased attacks, harsher climates, and the subversion of our trade and moral by other nations. I was like, you're totally just outlining the problems in the world as is. You know, the increased attacks being the heightened confrontation between the US and Iran, harsher climates being the problem with climate change, and the subversion of our trade and morals by other nations. So that's like unfair trade tariffs, trade wars, etc. You can 100% read contemporary geopolitics into this, and I think that's really cool.
Yes, yeah, you absolutely can, and you're meant to, but I just wasn't thinking of Iran. I wasn't thinking of Iran in the United States.
Were you thinking of someone else?
More the kind of the general rise of global fascism and ethno-nationalism and capitalism's role in promoting that and enabling it.
Oh, we're told.
Just generally.
The comments are going to be great. Down with capitalism always gets much love in comments. No, but joking aside, I think that is really cool that you that it's kind of pitched in this mad way where you can read it as literally it's just an attack by animals on this small town, or it's this is a proxy for problematic events in the world. So say again?
By monsters, at least.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second because I underlined that and I want to talk about them. So usual thing, I'm going to go through top to bottom.
Go for it.
I'll pitch my highlighted things at you, and you can talk about it if there's anything interesting to say. First thing I have is here the Musphere Zhikav route. So I'm assuming, and you're saying that like this town. This settlement lies off a tributary of the main trading corridor. Do I then take it that the Mirsphere Zhikav route is basically just a big river?
No, because remember, the Abeski, the spires, don't travel by boat. They travel by airship.
Oh, okay. So this town just happens to be at the tributary of a main trading corridor for some other culture, not the Abeski.
The tributary isn't a river. The tributary is just like a smaller kind of route, a lesser route.
Okay. I am sorry. I took that as being rivers. I'm sorry.
No. Sorry, that's fair. If that's not clear, that's not clear. Sorry. Yeah, I see where it was unclear now. Yeah. So, if you look at the map that I made a while back, Mirsphere and Shikav are both quite far north, and so there's like a route that you kind of commonly fly between them. But these are the main settlements, and the area in general is kind of sparsely settled, but there are towns and centers of industry dotted around, and this is like a small town off one of the kind of the lesser traveled trade routes that feeds into the Mirsphere to Zhikav trade route.
Sure, okay, that makes sense. I will throw the links to that map in the in the show notes for people if they want to go check it out. Now, I underlined unknown beasts because obviously down below you talk about them more, so we'll skip that. Investigation by the officers of the vessel, the Aspire. We have met the Aspire before. Do you want to give a recap on that?
Yes, we have come across the Aspire before. So the very first thing that I wrote set on eCairn, introducing introducing the Spires and this whole planet, was a letter from Yarta Yartlen to his cousin. And he was serving on the Aspire. So this is the vessel that Yar was on.
Cool. And that was tied into the brief narrative thread of like there being a treasure on some ship that they were trying to find, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So my next point is free trader. What's a free trader?
So, as I said, there's a lot of kind of outlying towns, and the Abeski don't travel by land over long distances because they have vessels, they have airships. And also, as is kind of outlined here, this is an extreme example, but as is outlined here, the land in general can be quite dangerous with the animals and stuff that live there, and it's quite rugged and things. So free traders are independent. They're like caravans, like trading caravans independent merchants who own an airship, and they're part of kind of the supply line and the part of the trade that connects all of these outlying towns. You'll have someone who kind of travels to kind of larger hubs and depots and brings things back and forth between them and between the outlying towns. Or you'll have people who travel kind of circuits just among the towns and facilitates that kind of smaller level trade just like directly between people, stuff like that. And they're very necessary because they're the main way of getting around, because, you know, if you've got a 100 miles of thick forest inhabited by, you know, let's say bears and tigers and things between towns, then this is very, very necessary. Otherwise, they would be completely isolated.
Sure. So, like, yeah, traders not associated with a big centralized company.
Yes, the free traders are not. The free traders are independent merchants.
Cool. So then we have the attack, and you say that the attack is conducted by the Arviks, by 3 Arviks. And the quote here you have here is, they conducted the attack with apparent intelligence and cruelty. Apparent intelligence? Are we talking animals, or are we talking sentient creatures here? What's going on?
They are very good hunters. And they, like, from looking at the progression of events, from what they could tell, the officers of the Aspire, like, could see planning and forethought and reaction to situations in what seemed like an intelligent manner. And Arviks are known to hunt that way, are known to fight that way. Whether or not they're sentient is not really clear. I mean, no one's talked to them.
Are the Arviks humanoid? No. So can you describe their form?
I haven't fully decided yet, but I'm thinking something. It will be in some respects like some kind of terrifying giant bird, I suspect.
Oh,
in some respects,
okay.
Not totally.
Okay, so yeah, so we should take the word beast, like you said, to mean monster, as opposed to animal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And also the apparent intelligence and cruelty. Like, it was very clear that they had deliberately killed every person. They hadn't just left the ones that were hiding. They had dug them up in order to kill them.
And, like, why?
Don't know, you'd have to ask them.
But no one's ever talked to one before, Bill.
You could be the first.
But I'm assuming the raid or this attack or something, is it just an act of cruelty, or were they just trying to get goods from the town and whatever, and it was, you know, like resource gain, or is it just like, we hate those humans?
I mean, like, why do man-eating tigers attack people?
Yeah, threat and hunger, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, I suppose it feeds into the idea of like apparent intelligence. Like, maybe this wasn't a thought out militaristic maneuver. It was like, we feel threatened by this town, and it can be an instinctual sort of thing. That's pretty cool. I like it. We talked about the increased attacks, harsher climates, and subversion of our trade and morals with other nations. We talked about how that, like, is reminiscent of contemporary geopolitics. The last thing you say, and the last note I have, is this broadsheet company basically says that in order to maintain security on this route, they should buy up the routes that the free traders use. And my response to that was like, no, don't do that. That's terrible. And here's the part where everyone's going to shout at us because it's going to be down with capitalism. It's taking a free market approach to something that I don't think the free market should be involved with.
Well, it's not. It is kind of a free market as it stands, because it's independent traders, and, like, you know, that's how they make their living. But it's more consolidation and monopoly, and it's attempting to leverage a tragedy for profit and to increase your own capital and power. That's what is happening here. The Mirsphere Broadsheet Company is owned by the Tamar Company.
Oh, there you go.
It is published by the Tamari. So they're using this to promote their own agenda of pushing out the free traders and having a greater control over the trade in this region. Eliminating competitors and so on.
Do you think that maybe you missed a trick here by making the Arviks be like monsters? Like, would it maybe have been cooler if they were like sentient humanoid people, like a race of people or whatever, and you could play a little bit of geopolitics here in that it's like a stage sort of thing. Someone has stoked fear amongst the Arviks, and as such they've lashed out, and that's a great excuse for the Broadsheet Company and Tamar Company to be all like, well, I mean, it's chaos down there. We had nothing to do with it, and I think the only way to solve it is for us to monopolize it.
Possibly. One of the things I wanted to do with this, though, is address the fact that the germ of the idea for Icairn was planetary romance, and I haven't written a single monster yet. But I mean, so I needed to put some damn monsters in the thing, and here's some monsters.
But I mean, I suppose you can kind of get the same result by like you could pressure the monsters to attack the place. Like I don't know, log their forest or whatever, and then they think they perceive that town or whatever as being the threat. So I suppose there are ways for the Tamar Company, if you wanted to go that way, to kind of cajole the monsters into inciting violence such that they can reap the monetary gain of it.
Yeah. But they're not going to put that in their own newspaper.
No, of course not. No, but we would read it like that, you know? We would be all like, oh, that's terrible and propaganda. But yeah, no, they obviously wouldn't spell it out like that in their own propaganda.
Yeah. I mean, if the Arviks were intelligent, that would be a possible thing that is happening here, for sure.
And then, unrelated, and I didn't make a note of it, it just popped into my head. You mentioned at the very, very start that, like, this is not a newspaper company as we know it. What do you mean by that? Like, do you mean that it's not a newspaper company in the sense that it's not, it's essentially like a company propaganda?
It's not that it's not a newspaper company, it's that the product, the physical thing, isn't exactly like a newspaper. It's more like a historical broadsheet. Like, it's just like, you'd get a handful of articles on like one big sheet.
Oh, okay. Is that the way broadsheets worked back in the day? They were just a single sheet with like 4 articles or whatever.
I think that was something that did happen at one stage. Yeah, I think in the kind of late 16, early 1700s, broadsheets were just big things with like articles printed on them. I'm not 100% on that now that I say it out loud, but it could be the case.
I remember a world where broadsheets were commonplace. And I guess they probably still are a little bit, like people still, I'm assuming people still print them. But I remember thinking to myself, what, like, these are the stupidest things. Like if someone said, how can we make this ergonomically as awkward as humanly possible? And someone would go, let's print it about 5 times too big to be comfortably open in any sort of space. And then someone went, let's go with it. I couldn't believe that passed any sort of like test or anything. And we were all fine with it. You'd see people on a train with these giant like bed sheets, just like smashing into other people, trying to open their thing. It was nonsense. It was crazy.
What if we had books, right? But only a few pages, and we have to publish them every day? Like, yeah, that's a great idea. But what if we make them stupidly big? What if we make them completely unwieldy?
Like, I wonder, do you think maybe the unwieldiness is a sort of like a social signifier? As in, like, I am so smart, I am going to take in all this information printed on this giant sheet. Whereas if you were sitting there with a little miniature thing, it'd be all like, well, that person's really stupid. Like, that thing only contains like a single story or whatever.
I'm the smartest person I know because I only read billboards.
I know, but there has to be some reason. There has to be some reason that.
No, I get you. Yeah, I get you. It's there is sense to what you're saying. I'm just drawing it to an absurd extreme.
Do you want to hear? Do you want to hear a damning story of past Edgar?
Yes, nearly always.
Nearly always. That everyone is going to, upon telling this, everyone's going to think lesser of me. But I need to remind everyone: past Edgar is not current Edgar. This is important. In school, as part of English class, we were doing, I guess, like the media section of it, like newspapers and journalism and that sort of crack. I think I must have been like 12, 13, like quite young. And I wasn't really conscious of the world and other people's feelings, and different people do different things. And on a test, we were asked, what is the difference between broadsheets and tabloids? So broadsheets being the giant thing, tabloids being the smaller form thing. And I was like, my answer was, intelligent people read broadsheets, because I was like, that's like the Times, the Independent. And then I was like, and I think I might have even wrote on the test, stupid people read tabloids, because that's like the trashy,
God.
the trashy things or whatever. And so that was fine. Like, I was an idiot for doing that. But the thing that sticks in my memory is that collectively as a class, we did very poorly on this test. And I remember the teacher, Miss Quinn, she basically called us all out the next time after the test and went through all of the most problematic answers and called the person out in front of the class. And she called me out. She was like, who wrote this abject nonsense? And I had to put up my hand, and she tore into me. I think that was one of the first times where I suddenly became cognizant of culture, the way people operate. It was mortifying, man. I'll never forget Miss Quinn tearing me a new one in front of all my peers for being horrifically insensitive towards everyone. It was no good.
I remember around the same age, maybe a little bit older, 14 maybe, in English class, everyone had to bring in a magazine and discuss it. And people brought in music magazines or whatever, sports or whatever. And I brought in an issue of the Weekly World News. Are you familiar with the Weekly World News?
No, but I'm assuming it's an Economist style thing.
No. The Weekly World News leading story was about how that week. Or that week, it's Weekly World News, was about how they'd found Goliath, as in the giant from David and Goliath, and the hole in his head matched that from a 38 caliber revolver. And it printed the most ridiculous, completely nonsensical news stories. If you just Google it, Google image search it, here's some here. A mall found on the moon is one of them. The first photos of heaven, they published that. Gay aliens found in UFO wreck. Survivors found on the Titanic. They had a recurring thing about Bat Boy, who was a half bat, half human child that was living feral in the United States. At that time, I think he had joined the US military to go to Iraq. I think they were trying to have him as a hero at that point.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that was my, and they would refer to real things sometimes, the Iceman that they found in the Alps, Otzi or whatever his name was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was alive. He woke up, according to the article in that issue. Yeah.
So what did you have to stand up in front of your class and give a presentation on this beautiful bit of satire?
I think so. And the teacher didn't really know what to do with me.
Oh, that's amazing. Classic Bill. Trolling the world since inception. That's class about it. All right. Well, so anyhow, I have that is all I have to say. That's all of my notes for increasing danger in northern settlements. Have you got anything to add?
No, I think that's everything. I think I've used the name felon before in this setting, but yeah, there are other people called Bill, there's other people called Edgar, nothing wrong with that.
Hardly any though, so it's always fun when I do meet another Edgar. I'm like, that's so crazy. We share the same. How does this work? Because I'm assuming if you're called Sean, you meet Seans all the time, and that's a perfectly normal part of it, like everyday experience for you. But for me to meet another Edgar is bizarre. For me to refer to another human by my name is so utterly alien to me that I find it really awkward to conduct myself in those situations.
That's so weird. You've pretty much picked up on everything there. The kind of propaganda stuff at the end. I'm glad that was picked up. And you got the right idea about it. It's very much trying to consolidate and end the existing system in favor of a more kind of monopolized one, and leveraging a tragedy to do so.
Will the evil Tamar Company succeed in their plans to monopolize the system? Tune in next week for your installment of World Billing.
Next week.
Cool. Well, anyway, so if that's all that, shall we move on to my video?
Let's do it.
Whose link I neglected to leave in the show notes. I'm assuming you can find it.
I have seen it.
You have seen it. So as usual, I made a video and we're about to talk about it. This video is called Why These Are the Best Numbers, and that is referring to a system of numerals created by a bunch of middle schoolers in 1994 called the Kaktovik Iñupiaq numerals, a system designed to notate the base 20 counting system of Iñupiaq, which is a dialect of which is a dialect up in northern Alaska.
Language, let's just go with language.
Yeah, language. And the video did really well. Like,
oh, nice.
Way better than expected, but just a little bit of like inside how the sausage is made complaint here. YouTube really, really wants you to make long videos. And it's so apparent when you make a shorter video, and that shorter video gets so many more views than what I usually get. Like my metrics were like, you're doing 500% better than usual, and I'm like, well, that's great. This must mean, I was like, this must mean that January is going to be a good month monetarily. And then you go check the revenue you get from this, and it's all like your revenue's down 2%. I'm like, it's so frustrating. And like, I get the need to incentivize longer content, because otherwise you'll just get like clickbait title plus 5-second video of some nonsense. And it doesn't matter how long people watch for, as long as you get the click, you get the cash, and that's fine. It's a good thing to incentivize watch time, but it feels so heavily skewed towards make longer stuff that it's like, well, sometimes a short video is a good thing, and it feels weird to be kind of punished for that, even though the video did really well. But that's like first world problem. Like, no one actually cares about that other than me. So what, as usual, what are your thoughts? And then I'll launch into my couple of things that I want to chat about.
Every so often when we're recording, and I'll say, just as I was watching the video, I had this thought, and then you immediately address that or whatever.
Oh yeah, I hope this is one of those times.
This was bigger than that, because before you put out the video, or before you put out the script for the video, I saw this on somewhere on Facebook, on some Facebook group or something. I saw the Wikipedia article about this system of numerals, and I was like, oh man, Edgar would really like that. I should send that to him. And then like 2 days later, out comes the script.
But also, Bill, we talked about those numerals on the show before.
Oh, did we? Okay, I couldn't remember whether we had or not.
Yeah, no, we totally had. But that's crazy. That's the universe telling you something there, man.
Yeah.
some sort of coalescence. Oh God, actually, I'm going to put into the green room. I want to complain about people in the green room. Hold on. Complaining about the universe. Okay. But okay, so I made your dreams come true. Anything else?
No, it was a really solid video. I thought explained things very, very clearly. I mean, it is a great system. I had never noticed the stuff about the visual element of doing mathematical operations. I had never copped that before. So that was cool to see. Yeah. I
Cool.
have nothing really constructive or destructive to say. Just it was really good.
That always fills me with such relief. Like, I really enjoy feedback both from you and listeners, but when you make a thing and people are just like, yeah, good, you're like, oh, good, there's no mistakes in there. There was like, it's really solid when people just go, yeah, perfect. I'm like, oh, yes. There were a couple of things that the audience brought up that I want to talk about really quickly. There was a good amount of people who were, I'd like to call them computational trick skeptics, who were like, they were like, yeah, okay, so that's really cool with those visual little tricks that you outlined for those examples, but like it feels very much like you're cherry picking examples and this wouldn't actually hold all the time. And to those people I say, you are 100% correct. It definitely, no system beyond just straight up tally marks can be one where you conduct mathematical operations just by eyeballing things. There's always going to be cases where it gets complicated and tricky and you have to resort to, like, in quotes, like standard maths. The point is not that I'm cherry picking, but rather that these computational tricks exist at all. Like, that's the point. Like, we don't have really any computational trick to make long division easier.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't make it harder.
Exactly.
It doesn't make just doing it the normal way we do it any harder. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was me pointing out the sort of pros of the system, not trying to say that this system is like a devoid of all sort of arithmetic and it's all computational tricks the entire way. Because again, unless you have straight up tally marks where like the number 1003 is literally 1003 strokes next to one another, you're never going to have something that's entirely visually intuitive.
Yeah. I mean, that's clearly the most logical. It's just very time consuming.
Exactly, yeah. It's you're trading, and this is a kind of cool thing about these sort of feature systems is you have to, if you're going to construct them for your language, for example, you have to trade sort of computational optimization for processing power almost. Like, because again, like the tally marks are the most computational friendly. It's literally like you look at the amount of strokes and you see how many times another bunch of strokes divides into it. No maths really required. You just kind of piece things together. But that's obviously, it takes an awful lot of processing power on the part of a human to be able to determine the difference between like 110 strokes beside one another and 150 strokes, you know? So you're trading visual intuitive intuition for computation. And that's a really cool balance to play with when creating these things. And there were people in the comments who were kind of like, who felt like the Kaktovik Iñupiaq numerals didn't do a very good trading system, and that's entirely fine. It's just an opinion. They were like, it's really hard to distinguish between these numerals. I find it very hard to look at them. And for those people, the trade-off was not done correctly there. And so, yeah, interesting thing to play with and to be aware of if you're going to go for a featural numeral system in your conlangs.
Yeah, I can see that. Those that's a valid criticism there. Yeah, that it's all very visually similar.
For sure, 100%. And that's a
that
problem people are going to run into non-stop with these type of systems, and they have to just be cognizant of, which is actually a really good segue into the next point. Loads of people brought up, they were like, hang on, this is just the Mayan numeral system except with different shapes. And the answer to that is yes, although it's an instance of spontaneous invention in that, as far as I can tell, the kids that came up with the KI numerals had no notion of the Mayan numeral system, nor did they have a notion of anything needed to construct a a system of numerals. Like they didn't have an idea what bases are. They didn't know what featural numeral systems. They just kind of like the story of how this invention is they were raised on standard Hindu-Arabic numerals. And then they were like, but hang on, our language counts to 20. And then they were like, well, we can't use the Hindu-Arabic numerals. So then they tried to adapt them a little bit and they found that was a mess. So they kind of like threw out everything and from first principles almost like rediscovered the principles of creating numeral systems, which is just like ingenious on their part. So they had no idea they didn't look at the Mayan numbers and be like, we'll take them. It just so happened that feature systems tend to be quite similar.
Yeah, I mean, and if they're both vigesimal, then they're going to be automatically quite similar anyway.
For sure.
Like I can't. I can't see how it would be otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And like again, like I said, with the feature systems, like if you're doing a feature system, you're going to be counting strokes, counting numbers with strokes. You're probably going to have some sort of subbase in there to make sure it doesn't turn into straight up tally marks. And then beyond that, it's really just a matter of like, do you use lines or dots and things like that? So feature systems tend to be quite similar anyways. It's just a function of the thing. In the same way that if we were to make a Hangul version of English where each of the letters were a little picture of what the mouth does when pronouncing the letters, you're going to end up with something looking somewhat similar to Hangul. There's only a finite number of ways that one can stylistically depict the mouth. Same thing goes with the numeral system.
I wonder. Funny that you use that specific example, Edgar.
Why? Why is that funny?
Because I remember when you made your featural script for OA, people were saying, "Oh, you just reinvented Korean." And I was like, "Didn't reinvent Korean. I made a featural system. It's a totally different language. It just has a sort of similar underlying design principle."
Now, in their defense, I was kind of going for ape Korean as much as possible because I wanted to make a video about Hangul, but without making a video about Hangul. So like to almost like play the part of your man King Sejong and just be all like, let's start from the first principles of letters should be pictures of the mouth, and let's go from there. So to almost take the audience through. This maybe is what King Sejong thought when he came up with Hangul.
Sure, but I still think it was a bit of a silly thing to say he just invented Korean because it was a different inventory and it wasn't even anything to do with any of the language of that. It was literally just a script.
For sure,
and an orthography.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sticking up for me, Bill, 4 years later.
I thought it at the time, it just never came up.
I would imagine we probably talked about it on the show way back when. Someone can fact check me on that. But anyhow, the last thing to do with the sort of criticisms for this video was a good number of people, not a massive amount of people, but a good number of people in below the YouTube video in comments. Were saying that they took issue with my use of the words "no maths required," and the basic shtick of the argument was that but Edgar, these little visual computational tricks, it's still mathematics. Like geometry, for example, can involve no numbers and just the manipulations of shapes in space. That doesn't make that any less mathematical. And to those people, they are correct. 100% correct. That is by the letter of the law correct. But I was going for a sort of... I have a friend who has dyscalculia, who struggle. That's a condition where you struggle very, very badly with mathematics. And I was thinking about pitching it to them. And for them, maths is numbers. It's computation. It's arithmetic. That's what maths is for them. When they say, I struggle with maths, they don't think I struggle with geometry. They think I struggle with algebra, arithmetic, etc. And in I was going for the everyday colloquial sense of maths. When people say the word maths, it's synonymous with numbers. So that's where I was
Yeah.
going for when I meant no maths required. You don't need to think numerically. But those people who said that the no maths required was a bit of a bit wrong, the wording was a bit wrong, I agree 100%. But it's more impactful, I think, when you say no maths required, and it sells the idea that even if you're bad at mathematics, the no maths required element here will make this a system that you can get on board with and use properly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Those are my three things I wanted to bring up. I have nothing else to say about the video. Real quick before we do Bank of Artifexia, just a thing when I mentioned in the recording there about like it's the universe telling you something, I began thinking about people who actually use that phrase seriously, and then a thing popped into my mind that I want to complain to you about, Bill, because I feel like you will understand and you'll sympathize with my frustration with regards to this. Okay?
Shoot.
So I met up with a friend recently, who you and I know, but will remain anonymous. And we met up for Christmas, just, catch up, festive season, that sort of thing. And I was like, what's going on with you? Any crack in your life? And this person says, oh, I'm going to see an astrologer. As in, and not seeing as in romantically seeing as in professionally seeing an astrologer. And the same way you'd see a physio or whatever. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, here we go. But for the sake of like being nice, I was like, oh, that's cool. Tell me about this or whatever. And so the person just like talked about what going to an astrologer involves. And then it turned out, Bill, right, that this person is paying €160 per consultation to go to the astrologer. And like for that privilege, this person has been told things like, oh, the planets aren't aligned correctly, ergo this new relationship that you're currently embarking on. This person had recently met a new romantic partner. This new relationship is not going to work out. The astrologer told this person that they should ditch this new fledgling romantic relationship because, I don't know, Saturn is doing something. And for that privilege, they got charged £160. And I did some research on this particular astrologer, and it's just like it's not that I was expecting them to be like an upstanding citizen or whatever, because they're peddling nonsense, but it's so transparently bullshit, and it costs £160. Like that is more than doctors charge, that's more than like the most highly educated of people in our society charge for their services. £160, Bill. Oh, I nearly lost it. It was just, oh god damn it. So yeah, I just wanted to complain about that. That's awful that exists in the modern world.
Astrology seems to be kind of on an upswing recently.
Really?
And I'm seeing a lot more people. I think so, yeah. Or maybe I'm just seeing more of it. And like, if someone has a tool that helps them formalize and kind of get their thoughts in order and gives them a framework to consider things, that's a good thing. And if anyone wants to practice their spirituality or however they do, I mean, fine. I don't. It's not for me, but it's their business, whatever. But like, that just sounds exploitative.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you want to do your own astrology in your own time and you derive great enjoyment from that and it helps you, that is totally fine. I don't dictate to others how to do things, but I take, just like you said there, I take issue with a person presenting themselves as like an expert and then charging massive prices for it. Like that's the insidious part of it all. And like you prey on, because people don't go to astrologers or psychics or whatever if everything's going gravy and they have clear goals and they're hitting targets. They go if they need some guidance in life. So you're preying on people who are not in an optimal position, and that's gross. And like that astrologer, like when I looked into him, I was like, that person should be ashamed of themselves, like utterly ashamed of themselves. But they're not, and they just continue to make I'm what I can only assume is like hundreds of thousands a year, and it's so demoralizing, and it drives me up the wall. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just wanted to complain. It's awful. Like, and I thought to myself, like, I don't want to be all like, oh, I'm so virtuous, and because I'm not, but just I could never. Thanks, Bill. Cheers for the ringing endorsement there. But like, I could never. I thought about like, could I? Like, I could totally hop on this bandwagon. I'm a space nerd. I know my space. I'll download some of those whatever they're called, ephemeral charts or whatever, and make some nonsense reading, and then charge whatever, undercut the chap and charge £100 an hour or whatever. And I was like, but I'd feel so disgusting as a human doing so that like I would never do it. Like, and I'd love to hop into those people's heads and just be like, what's going on in there? Like, what are you thinking? Like, do you think that you're actually doing good in the world, or do you know that you're being exploitative? Like, I don't know. Like, they're just those people are strange, man.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I can't understand that mindset at all. But, like, I can't understand the mindset of predatory landlords either. And, like, they're a huge problem.
Can I defend the predatory landlords just for a second to distinguish?
Absolutely not.
I'm going to anyways. You can shout at me later. I'm with you though. For the predatory landlords are bad, but like I can place myself in their shoes and think to myself, well, these people are saying they're providing people like a literal place to live. Now they're probably overcharging and crappy conditions and all the nastiness that goes with predatory landlords, but at least they are, peddling in things that exist in the universe, whereas astrologers, they're just selling like lies. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I find a predatory landlord and an astrologer, I find that they would have to go through two very different thought processes to justify their existence. And one, I can understand, the predatory landlord, and the astrologer, I just cannot understand how they could justify what they do to themselves.
I mean, it's possible that they believe it.
Yeah, but it involves, like, that's fair, but that involves, like, just such levels of blind belief that is unfathomable to me, because, like, so much of it just makes, like, is essentially magic. It's like stuff like, oh, Saturn, again, to bring up an example of this person was like, oh, I'm thinking about moving abroad, and the astrologer was like, oh, Saturn is rising over that country, so that would be an advantageous thing to do. And I was like,
how can Saturn rise over one country?
But that's what I'm saying, man. Like, it makes, like, but it's not even, like, if you believe that, that's okay, but, like, even questioning it ever so slightly, it just brings the house of cards down completely. Like, so much of it is just abject nonsense. It's just, I don't know.
I think people can still believe in it, even if it is apparent as nonsense to others. People can still, like, genuinely believe in it themselves. But scumbag landlords know they're scumbags. If you're deliberately, like, keeping places in bad conditions and exploiting workers and, making people homeless and stuff.
Okay, again, I need to state that I agree with you, right? So don't think that what I'm about to say is my actual position. But devil's advocate here for a second. What about the notion that everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story? Do you think maybe scumbag landlords think that? They're like, I'm providing so many people.
Yeah, okay. I'm wrong. I'm wrong when I said they know they're scumbags. Yeah, no, that wasn't accurate. But, like, I think you can genuinely believe in a belief system and think that you're helping people with your knowledge, but I don't know how you could think that you're helping people by breaking the law in providing providing unsafe living environments.
Sure.
I don't know how you would justify that to yourself.
Yeah, actually,
but I can conceive of how you could justify something like being an astrologer.
Yeah,
I mean, like there's religions and spiritual practices of all flavors, and they can't all be true. but not all the people who do them as careers, that doesn't make them all bad people. Now, I would say that it's very likely the guy you're talking about is some kind of predator. But I don't know. I would say it was overwhelmingly the case that this person is. But I can still see that other astrologers might genuinely think what they're doing is a service and not be malicious.
Yeah, I guess. And I suppose because people, that's going to make me sound like a dick, and I'm sorry, but I suppose in general people tend to have little knowledge about space, mainly because people find it boring. That I can kind of see someone looking at space and being all like, oh yeah, Jupiter and Saturn are in alignment and that does a thing. You know, I guess I can kind of see people misunderstanding facts of the universe to such an extent that their belief seems plausible. Maybe. And maybe I'm just too into my space to accept that people could, you know, with all seriousness, believe that Saturn is rising over a country in Europe. I don't know. Anyhow, Bank of Artifexia.
Let's go into the Bank of Artifexia.
For something more fun. All right. So this month, we have another contribution to the Bank of Artifexia, and this comes from second-time writer Collie, who I'm going to assume lives in Canada because they sent us, and you can click on the link there, Bill, and you can see a picture of the note. They sent us a 20 Canadian dollars, which I really like. And I actually, like, if links in the show notes, people go check. I actually take back anything I ever said about Canadian money looking like monopoly money. It looks no more or less like monopoly money than any other type of money. I think it looks great. I mean, there's a bit too much Queen going on. There's okay. 2 instances of Queen right beside each other if you count the watermark. It looks a bit weird, but like it's really good. And on the reverse side of the note, there's like indigenous inspired artwork, which I think is really cool looking. Collie gives some info on that, and I think it's really cool. Special thing about this note is that it is not a polymer note, which apparently modern Canadian notes are. It is a paper note, and this is part of the 2004 series of notes. So if we assume that this was a note came into existence in 2004, this is a 16-year-old note that I was just sent by Collie, and that is very cool.
It's pristine looking in the photo here.
Yeah, it's not like pristine, like straight out of an ATM pristine, but it's like clearly Collie has kept it like in between a book or something. It's very flat. Yeah, I think it looks great.
Thank you, Collie.
Thank you, Collie. Shout out to the way they printed the 20. Again, it links in the show notes for people. On the front, I believe it's the front. The 20 is like, it's green and it's got just the fill of the numbers is just a whole bunch of maple leaves, which from a distance looks like little weed plants. And it looks like a 420 note. Like, I'm like, what? I had to like do a double take. I was like, what are you doing? Oh, okay, maple leaves. I get it.
Does that not set off your trypophobia?
No, it needs to have holes. I need to be able to look into the thing. The canonical example for me with the whole being afraid of holes thing is if you make pancakes with any sort of raising agent in them and you fry them, the pancake will fluff up. And then it will start to get, oh God, it's just so gross when I think about it. It'll start to get little holes on the surface, but there's also little holes inside the pancake as well. So when you look down a hole, you're looking into like this chasm of holes, and it's just, it just makes my skin crawl every time, man. So this does not trigger that, thankfully, because that would be not good.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia article here to see what all this artwork is. So the photograph of Elizabeth II is from the year 2000. It was taken specifically for this banknote, and it appears next to a vignette of the centre block of Parliament Hill. So that's the part of the Houses of Parliament for Canada, I guess. The main building of the Canadian Parliamentary Complex, right? And on the back, because that was the thing that stuck out at me there. There was I thought it was a church, but I wasn't wondering what it was. And then we've got on the back illustrations of an artwork by Bill Reed, a Haida artist, or an artist of Haida heritage, and a sculpture of the Raven and the First Men, and an extract from a novel. Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of art on it, actually.
It is chock-a-blocked, and it's actually mad because when you look at it, you don't really think it's that chock-a-block. Now, like I said before, if you hold it up to the light, you'll get multiple instances of the Queen, which is a bit cumbersome. But in normal viewing conditions, it doesn't look...
Too many.
Too many, exactly. Oh God, all the comments we're going to get from people who love the royal family. Oh, Jesus. That is exactly what Collie says in the note here. Bill Reed, Canadian artist of Haida descent. The Haida being famous for their paintings and totem poles, and Reed is inspired by their work. So it's really cool. Does a good job blending the sort of like old with the new, so to speak, on the note. I really like it. For those who are interested, 20 Canadian dollars is at the time of recording €13.79 and $15.40, and it's also $53.89 in Turkmenistan money, which I'm going to use as my new sort of bring it up every time because it's a total non sequitur.
What's the Turkmenistan currency called?
The manat, I think. I think it's what the Turkmen manat. So it's 53. As we all know, it is 53.89 in Turkmen manat. So yeah. So thank you very much, Collie. I would like to put out a new call for notes, if that's okay with you, Bill.
Sure.
I would like to put out a call for Mexican pesos. I'm banking on the fact that most of our listeners are in the US, and perhaps they have holidayed in Mexico at some stage. And maybe they have some Mexican peso. So if anyone has the lowest denomination Mexican peso and would like to write into the show and leave a little letter, and we'll read it out on air, you'll find the links to that in the show notes. So please do. If you can, please do. That would be really cool. In general, I would put a call out for any North American currency, but I find it a little bit harder to, get, I don't know, San Lucian currency or Costa Rica currency or whatever. I feel like that would be a little bit trickier. I don't think we have a big listenership in those countries.
I suspect not.
But yeah, if anyone has Mexican pesos, that would be class. Then the map would look baller. It'll look like North America's just done. And then we can focus on South America after that. So thank you so much, Collie, to writing in. Thank you so much to everyone for writing in. I adore Bank of Artifexia. It's great.
Thank you so much. It's a real fun kind of thing to see evolve over the months.
And so with that, that's everything I have, Bill. Shall we wrap up?
I think we'll leave it at that.
Oh, sorry. There is one last thing. Next time we record, folks, chances are quite high that we will be talking about Embassy Town in the green room. I'm about halfway through the book. Bill reads a lot quicker than I, so he'll definitely be done within the next month or whatever. I assume, anyways, Bill. And so if you want, get yourself a copy of Embassy Town, links in the show notes, pick it up, have a read. We'll talk about it in the next green room. I am intrigued thus far. I think it'll lead to a good conversation. But anyhow, thank you for listening.
Great.
Thank you to the patrons for supporting the show. And until next time, Edgar out.